attempt that, none of us asked for it.
No.
This is why I like doing it a little bit early, because it's just a little bit where it can go.
Yeah. That's what it's about.
And so see, now there would be.
It's finding the sweet
Wanting to
spot.
give some sort of like that.
Yeah.
Right, but it doesn't get created into.
Here's Nicole. Nicole's wishing she could get my neighborhood.
So now you can close. Oh, so now, like, if you wanted to, it would be. Oh. It doesn't get made.
It's a luxury.
We're not gonna. And now it's fine. Now it's live on YouTube. It's muted. Really close. Yeah. Let's just click on that.
Yeah. There could be an argument to be made.
I know.
I didn't know it was new, but that makes sense.
Well, I don't know, I mean, you know.
Like one time. They might keep your address.
I know.
Customer.
Yeah.
I-
Can't get whatever you're.
Can't charge you later.
It seems like probably, but you know.
Right, no one's tried it before, that's why.
Right.
Yeah. I know, the last time I was asked, which electric motorcycle, they couldn't answer that question.
Wow.
Not me, but, okay.
Doesn't have pedals.
All right, so this is our first agenda.
Molly's second.
Molly's not coming, I saw. We are at 9:02.
Are we ready?
Are you guys ready? Are you ready? All right. Morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Santa Cruz Libraries Facility Financing Authority. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Palacios,
Here.
Director Huffleton,
Here.
Director Legault is absent, Director Goldstein.
Here. All right, so it'll take us to first item. Do we have any additional materials today?
No, we don't.
No, we don't. Okay, we did receive some communication, I think, on one of the items that were listed on the.
Yes,
agenda.
those have been added to the last, part, item number 11.
Great, thank you. Okay, any changes to today's agenda?
No, we don't.
Okay. That takes us to public comment. This is the opportunity for anyone to comment on anything that is not on today's agenda or is on today's consent calendar. Do we have any public comment today? Seeing none in the room, do we have any public comment? We take public comment online.
No, not any longer. No
All right.
public comment online.
Then I will close public comment, which brings us to the library director report. Do we have a oral report today?
No, I've submitted it in writing.
Okay. Then that takes us to the next item on today's agenda, which is the consent calendar. It looks like we have 3 items on today's consent. So we want to pull an item or make a motion to approve.
Move approval. Second.
Okay, move approval, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, that takes us to general business and project updates and comments by board members. Do we have any project updates this morning? No. All right, then our schedule for upcoming meetings. Is this right? Am I missing any pages of the agenda? That's it? Our schedule for upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is June 6th at 9 a.m. It'll be at the Grant Sporting Library. And with that, I will adjourn the LFFA. Going down. Okay, and that will take us to our other meeting this morning, which is Joint Powers Board Authority for the Santa Cruz Libraries. I will note that the same members are present for this meeting. Do we have any additional materials today on? the
Yes,
JPA?
item 13, the written correspondence has been added to the package.
Great, thank you. Okay, any changes to today's JPA agenda?
No changes.
Changes? Okay. We're like a deja vu. Public comment is an opportunity for anyone to address this board on items that are not on today's agenda or on today's consent calendar. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Brings us to the director's report. Dr. Howard, do you have any verbal comments today on JPA?
Chairman Goldstein, I've submitted it in writing.
Okay. All right, then that takes us to the next item, item 6, which is report by friends of the libraries. We have a report this morning.
Hi,
Fine.
I don't know where to stand. I'm gonna stand over there.
All right.
See everybody. Hi, I'm Janice O'Bristol. I'm president of the Friends, and I wanted to give you an update. This is an exciting spring for us. In advocacy, we are very busy out in the community talking about the value of libraries, the library projects that are going on, the campaigns that are going on. We are going to participate in the Kids Day in downtown Santa Cruz on this Saturday, May 4th, and 4th be with you. And we are going to talk about not just the value of libraries, especially for service to children and families, but also the importance of the downtown branch to not only the city of Santa Cruz, but to the whole system. And so we're going to be there to talk about that and participate in that. We'll be at the Juneteenth celebration in June, and also in advocacy, the Felton branch is going to celebrate the partnership between libraries and county parks on June 8th. There's going to be a big party. We didn't have a chance to have that big party to show how the library and the county parks are working together. So we have those exciting things happening. But of course, we're also fundraisers. And we fundraise all year round. We fundraise for important programs such as one's coming up right now for summer reading. The Friends contribute between $25,000 to $30,000 toward summer reading every year. In addition to that, and this is an important program, we contribute about $40,000 to the Read Tutoring Program. And this is an opportunity in the branches for children either learning to read or strengthening their comprehension skills to work one-on-one with credentialed teachers to improve their skills. That goes on all year round during the school year, and it goes on in the summer. And we are very pleased to spend a lot of our fundraising time raising that money so the teachers can be paid. So we've had that kind of fundraising going on. We fundraise to keep the doors open, of course. The other thing is, at the same time we're doing all of that, we have one more capital campaign to do, the downtown branch. And I just want to give you a quick update on that. We have a very strong planning committee that is already meeting every other week. They represent community fundraisers, people that you would know who have been raising money in the community and supporting libraries for a very long time. Those community members and board members. And we are working on strategies to talk to people, and we're especially not only talking to people about what we want to do for the downtown branch, but we're finding out the questions that they have and the comments that they have, so that when we talk to anyone in the community, we know what their questions about their project are. Basically, we have two jobs: to explain what this new downtown branch will be and why it is the hub of the system, but also explain its part in the entire project. And we're giving lots of positive support. The planning committee enjoys the support of the library staff of the city of Santa Cruz, and the community that is just very interested. So lots of things are happening. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have, but we're moving fast.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Sudhir? Critical. All right, thank you. Okay. So that takes us to item 7, which is a report by the LAC. Do we have an LAC representative here today to make a report? No, we do not. Okay. That takes us to our consent calendar. You can't count how many items we have on consent, but we have a number of items on consent. Do any of the board members want to pull any items on consent? All right, I'll note that we are receiving our annual audit, which is always appreciated and an important moment. Thank you for all the work. I know that takes a lot of effort to put those together. So with that, do we have a motion to approve consent?
I'd move consent to approval.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, that takes us to general business. The first order of business this morning is our fiscal 25 draft library operating budget proposal. We have a staff report.
Yes, we do, Chair. We have slides here to just take you through how this was developed.
We have a little remote for you, if you'd like to use it.
Great. Thanks. So, the big picture is that we are, again, balancing the budget using our fund balance. And there are two pieces that I think are worth focusing on. One is some investments, the one-time investments that we're doing to continue to strengthen our effectiveness and resiliency. We're doing all of this through the strategic plan's major goals, which include DEI, the needs of the community, and what we need to do to strengthen library services. So going forward, those will include a number of things that we have on the very near horizon, including opening the Live Oak Annex, preparing for that. We're also continuing to bring forward to this board in June a consultant that we hired to look at the long-term financial health of the organization. They'll be presenting at the June meeting. We're also continuing with the cost benefit analysis, where we are looking at the different models for providing admin services to the library. And as I mentioned, we're using the unrestricted fund balance to help balance this budget. So this gives you a snapshot of where we are with our revenue. There is a slight increase to this year's budget from the proposed budget last year. And we did make in this proposal some proposed changes to personnel to help us meet some of those goals that we have in our strategic plan. But those personnel changes remain budget neutral. We're doing that through a anticipated retirement that is coming from one of our positions that we've decided it makes more sense within the framework of our strategic plan to focus on some of these changes within personnel. We are going to continue to examine the rebate that we did get for our scenic connection because that rebate has expired. So and that is now costing us $110,000 as a result. So we are going to continue to explore some options around that. But that's definitely going to impact us this upcoming fiscal year. So we did decrease and found some cost savings in some areas. Of course, our biggest spending is personnel. And I'm going to flip to another slide. And last year we did budget significantly for some of the professional services that we're using right now. So we won't be doing that next year with the exception of a couple. So there is a savings there compared to last year. But the increase really comes from the ongoing costs that we have that are baked into the system around COLAs and PERS and benefits for personnel. So that's where we're really seeing the biggest increase. So these are the personnel changes that we are proposing. And I want to kind of take us back through the goals and the strategic plan to highlight why these are needed. We are taking one position in our IT department, someone who has provided enormous value, and this is a struggle for us to really find this right balance within our strategic plan. This person is retiring, but we also recognize some of the long-term goals we've had for the organization, which is to have a dedicated librarian at least one dedicated librarian in every branch. And then provide outreach in that community as well. So this allows us to do that and kind of complete that goal that we had for the organization. It would be filling a position that doesn't exist right now for the La Selva branch and that community in that area. Right now, the very busy Aptos library is lending one of their 2 librarians to help support that community, which puts a strain, of course, on the Aptos community. And doesn't provide the full service that we believe we need to be providing in the La Selva area. So this helps us achieve that. We also provide carrier service 5 days a week where we move books from one branch to another, depending on a patron request. And now that we have Aptos up and running, which is, as you can see from our report, the circulation numbers are up across the entire system. So in order to improve customer service, we want to create a new half-time position out of the money that's left over from this other position that, we would delete. That would allow us to do a number of really important things. One, we can improve customer service because we can have that carrier service also exist on Saturday, which really reduces the burden significantly on that carrier on Monday who comes in. You can imagine they've had books pile up from all 10 branches from both Saturday and then also from our Sunday service as well. But it also allows us to move those books around faster as well. So that would help assist with that. We can also use the bookmobile assistant to be backup for the bookmobile when those individuals are out sick. We don't have any system right now for backing them up. And then it could also potentially support some of the services that we're looking at providing at the Live Oak Annex as well. In addition to that, the bookmobile does circulate almost as many items and sometimes more than some of our small branches. So we really look at it like a mobile branch that's serving the community. And it should, in my opinion, have the same model that we have for those branches in terms of supervision. So we have a branch manager at all of our branches, but we don't right now on the bookmobile. And so this would also provide for that. And we're also doing that not just through the IT position, but there's an accounting position. And we've been looking, or I should say an admin position that we would also, it's there listed as accounting assistant 1.5. And we do believe that we can use that funding as well to help support these other areas. And it wouldn't have, we believe, a significant cost to us operating right now. That position is vacant at this time. We also believe, and this is why we put the picture that we did on the budget report of a really powerful partnership that we've created. That I wrote in the report is the cornerstone of much of what we do is we are successful because of the strength of our partnerships and how we build those and what we can learn, and also recognizing what we can't do as a library, but we need to rely on these partners to do. So to help us achieve that, and this is also part of the strategic plan, to help us achieve that better, we really feel it's important to have a manager position that is overseeing outreach and building those and strengthening those partnerships. And so that's what this also calls to do, is to take an existing librarian 2 position and take it to that level of librarian 3 that can oversee that outreach work, strengthen those partnerships. And then there is still some money left over, which is important because we do rely a lot on our temporary workforce to help substitute in when we have staff out on maternity leave or other long-term needs. We need those substitutes, and so that funding also helps to provide for that as well. So this gives you a breakdown of how we're using the uncommitted fund balance. So underneath, you'll see a line that reads one-time costs. These are the investments, the one-time investments that I was talking about earlier, to really strengthen our resiliency as an organization and to think forward about how we can become more efficient, especially as we're thinking about the new downtown library. One thing that we want to explore, and what many library systems our size rely on right now, is automated library handling machines. We will and are right now with some of our busy branches at that level where it would benefit us significantly with our efficiency and support staff if we had those. And we want to do sort of the deep dive into examining what that might look like if we do explore it. So we're putting in money for our consultant to help us review that. The idea is if we did bring this on, and I just want to note for, there's some acronyms here to get away from, I should say, there's 2 things that go hand in hand with this. So typically, you have the automated handling machine, and that typically relies on RFID, not always, but this is something that would require us to go back and touch every single item in the collection to make sure that there's the ability for an RFID reader to read the book and then operate the automated handling machine. So it's really looking at both of those pieces and looking at what the efficiency may be. This is also something that we raised with the consultant who was looking at our long-term financial health with us too. We did interviews, just as I know the board members did, about what future costs there may be and what future savings there might be as well. So they are examining this aspect as well. because libraries do experience some efficiency when they go to the automated handling machines, the RFID. So they'll be presenting that as well in June. But this is to look specifically at what would make sense for this library system if we went that road, went down that road for RFID. If we did, my thought at this time is we bring that all on board at the same time that we have the new downtown library. So that we would install an automated handling machine there if the consultant said this was the best way for us to go forward. And we would likely do it at our busiest branches, so Capitola, for instance, Aptos, and possibly one or two others. But the entire collection, if we went down this route, would have to have the RFID tags. So one thing too, by deleting the IT position that we need to do is think about how we're gonna support our website. We have two people who do focus on our website in the organization right now. This contemplates moving our website into the cloud and then getting some other savings through technology that we have as well to support that change. And then we have been in the process of moving many of our staff over from the downtown library to headquarters, including our IT department. And that really requires having a backup source of power, where we've been developing a plan with the city of Santa Cruz's water department to share a generator for our headquarters, because right now we share that office space with the water department. And so it was considered a savings if we share those resources. And so this money will help support that change, and it will also help us potentially move the current generator that we use up to Boulder Creek. But I do want to note that that move will happen, that move of a generator from downtown to Boulder Creek won't happen in the next fiscal year. And that's because we need to leave that generator basically running as we do the migration. And so those things that will happen later. And then, of course, we come back to our strategic plan. So we're getting close to the end of the life of the current strategic plan, and we need to consider going out and getting some support to rethink that current plan. So that includes the funding for that as well. And then the top line there is the 566,000 is what we are using outside of the one-time costs to help balance the budget. Those are the key points. Happy to take your questions.
All right, so there's gonna be some board questions.
I'm gonna start.
Yeah, go ahead.
First, I apologize. You have three city managers here and we love this kind of stuff. I'm sorry. I didn't want to be with the city managers doing the budget, but let's start with the big picture, just in terms of service levels. Now that we have all 10 branches open, explain the overall model that we're using, philosophy we're using in terms of hours and staffing for each of our branches in this budget.
So we're not proposing there is a proposal to return Capitola in this for this meeting to return Capitola to its 6-day service. And so there isn't any proposal to change hours outside of that for the organization. However, I am recommending that as part of that strategic plan that we do that holistic review of what makes sense for this community. And I've alluded to some of those potential changes, something that I would at least like us to examine. That is, for instance, evening hours in some areas so that we can better serve working families. We do provide service, of course, on the weekends, but I think that's something that we need to examine. So but the current proposal doesn't propose any other changes outside of what we're proposing for
So then the
Capitola.
Live Oak annex, that's not anywhere included in the budget at this point.
Other than that support for the bookmobile is that could potentially help provide some of those service hours. But it is really seen as a kind of a I mean, it's a connection to Live Oak. So I sort of see it as the same, it's just an extended space for them. But the goal right now is to provide some books, a limited collection that would require some support from staff in order to maintain that collection. And then the program librarians that are based out of the Live Oak branch would help support some of the programs that go on at the Live Oak annex. So that's how we're, I guess, accounting for it. I don't know if that answers.
So no budgetary impact, basically, you're just using staff, leveraging existing resources and staff to provide some level of services there in this budget.
That's correct. We have a innovation grant, and that's what we've used to develop the very small collection. That's in this current fiscal year. We're allowed to do that within our innovation grant. So we've used that to support the limited collection that exists. And then the personnel would be existing personnel. If we convert this IT position into these other positions that we're, doing. And it would, that bookmobile position, though, would support the entire system in these other capacities, like the carrier service, back up to the bookmobile, et cetera.
I noticed the administrative cost to the city of Santa Cruz isn't going up. There was a negotiated increase to that. How was that? What was the basis for the negotiation and the amount that it increased?
It increased roughly $25,000.
Yeah.
In this interim while we're doing the cost benefit analysis.
Right.
I'm not sure how that was negotiated. And then, of course, we're waiting for the cost benefit analysis to determine more how we
I
go.
just wanted to see why, just why 25,000, instead of 20 or 30, or, it just seems arbitrary, and I was just trying to figure out what was it based on, or,
It was, I have to go back and look, and I can find out. It was a percentage increase.
okay.
That I don't know, because I wasn't part of that. But
So if you could get me that information, I'd appreciate that. And then, another thing, I'll just go to the big picture a little bit. I noticed that, so in FY 23, I guess it was, we ended up having a fund balance savings of $1.3 million. And then, this year, so that seems to be how we build our fund balance, right? Our unrestricted fund balances. Every year we seem to have this carryover fund balance. It grows up. And then, so now we're projecting a decrease or a loss of, in the current fiscal year, of $658,000. I think that's right. So I'm just wondering if it seems like we always underestimate how much we're gonna save. We always project a deficit, and then we end up having a pretty substantial savings, and then that rolls into the fund balance, and then we take out the fund balance, and that balances the budget. It just seems like this ongoing cycle, and it makes it seem weird that we're always taking out of fund balance, out of restricted fund balance. We're projecting a deficit, we take out of fund balance to balance the budget, when maybe we should just get a better estimate of what we're gonna really happen at the end of the year, and then build the rollover fund balance into the next year's budget. I mean, all of us have fund balance. No one spends every cent, but hopefully not, and we don't wanna ever have a deficit. So there's always a little bit of fund balance in every budget, right? That you roll over to the next fiscal year. And we don't tend to do that. We always project, a deficit like this case, and then we look at the end results, ends up being a surplus. We put that into the reserves, and then we take out of the reserves. So I'm just wondering, maybe instead of taking out reserve, putting in reserve, we just build it into fund balance. And
Yeah, I was gonna speak to that as well.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit as though perhaps it's not a structural. Right, it's not a structural issue. Perhaps we're budgeting a little bit overly conservatively in some of our assumptions. So I do think there's an opportunity for us to perhaps rethink how we're addressing that, and how we're forecasting end of year fund balance going forward, given that through the last several fiscal cycles, there's clearly a pattern, right? So something for us to think about going forward.
I agree, 100%. And that is a large motivation, I think, behind our desire to have Baker Tilly look at how we're doing this and then forecast forward where we might be. They will come back in June and provide a report on this around that.
And they're building out a 10-year forecast, is that correct?
I want to say it was 5, but it was.
10.
It's 10, okay.
Okay.
I will note that I think, by memory, I think during the pandemic, when we were running really big surplus due to not filling staffing positions for a lot of reasons. I think if I remember right, last year's point, we were showing a surplus. This year at this point, we're showing a deficit in the current year. So, I know you guys have done a lot of work to get us a year-end estimate at this point, when we're adopting the budget for this year. It's really as accurate as can be. So I take the point about, it always feels weird to adopt a budget showing a deficit and then we close with the surplus and then we have more money and it, create kind of an awkward position for the board. I do want to keep us on kind of questions at this stage, and then we can kind of bring it back for just, input and direction to staff about how we want to see changes for the final budget. So, are there more questions?
Can you speak a little bit more, Eric, to what the RFID consultant study will do with that? Will that also look at operating and personnel efficiencies related to the material handling? I would imagine through that automated process, there's significant opportunity for efficiencies.
Yes, I don't want to overstate though the efficiencies, but it definitely does improve the efficiencies. And then also, we need to examine what type of equipment we can actually fit into some of our buildings. What potential equipment makes the most sense. And so looking at all those costs, because it's a huge endeavor. As you can imagine, you have to touch every single item, and there's different ways of doing that. You can do that when the items are coming back. You can do it. You can just tackle the entire system. So what makes sense for our system may not make sense for another system. So I kind of want us to think about that.
Got it.
Okay, I have a couple questions. One of these is related to the questions about kind of fund balance is the sales tax estimate. And I do believe that that comes from our library financing authority, of which we're not the board. Maybe directed to a member of the audience, but can you help me understand a little bit about what went into the sales tax estimate? I looked at the most recent library financing authority kind of estimate. It looks to me like, unless this last quarter of the fiscal year is pretty bleak this year, that we're actually gonna beat the sales tax estimate this year. Kind of my gut. I don't know what your take is, and then I'm wondering if we might be low then, if we exceed this year's, are we then low for next year? So curious if staff has any input.
I'm happy to answer. Okay. Nicole Coburn, Assistant CEO. So I do work with staff on the sales tax estimate, and we're very close to the current year budget. It does look like it's gonna go over just slightly this current year budget. So and the latest round, I sent out the third quarter report. It looks like it probably will just slightly go over what the library has in the budget. We are looking at a slight increase for next year, around 1 to 1.5%. So I would imagine you're showing a decrease in the budget. I think you're going to be able to show just a small increase in next year's budget, and be happy to get you those numbers. So that should show a little bit of improvement. In terms of your use of fund balance for next year, you're not gonna make up this $500,000 if that's what you're asking, but
Yeah.
I would imagine you'll probably make up a little bit of that.
Yeah, okay, well, that corroborates kind of what I was looking at the numbers. I was thinking that there might be a couple $100,000 there.
Yeah, I would imagine somewhere in that range.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm gonna look at my phone, not because I'm checking text, but because I wrote down questions on my phone while you were speaking. The positions, when you were talking about the positions, you talked about the new positions, you talked about the positions that were going away, and then there was the line that said tentative other changes, and that's how you kind of got to the balance. I didn't hear an explanation about what we meant by the tentative other changes. And if you explained it, I'm sorry, I may have just, I'm trying to type the notes on my phone.
Are you able to reverse back to?
Is it not working?
No. There we go, okay.
Yeah, those 3 positions there at the bottom. How tentative are they, I guess, if we're sort of budgeting them?
You wanna
So we're assuming that there'll be internal recruitments, and then there may be some savings with staff shifting around.
I understand. So they're kind of tied to the additions above. In some sense. Okay, that helps. All right, I'm just have to go off memory here. Then on the automated check-in systems, I remember, and this was a while ago now, taking tours of other libraries as we were gonna build the Capitola branch and seeing, I think it was in Santa Clara, that their backup house and a pretty elaborate setup that they had to do this. Have our facilities, I would assume that some of our facilities really don't have the space, or maybe the space requirement to do this sort of thing have changed over time. Is that something you've taken into account about like where could we do this even
Yeah, so
physically?
the new facilities, were designed with that in mind.
Okay,
And you wouldn't need them at all the branches. The RFID, every item has to have that tag. The automated handling, machine isn't needed at every branch. And that's the two what I think consultant will help us identify. It's really needed where we're busiest. So the new downtown library. And that has been designed into the, it's in the designs right now. One of the questions too, though, that we continue to wrestle with the architect is, you can think of it as you have like a bin for nonfiction, a bin for fiction, and then there's maybe adult and children. At what point does it actually improve efficiency? And then because you could have a bin for almost every single section of the library. So those are the kind of questions that we want to ask, and that requires different space allocation. So we really want to make sense. Is it worth the investment? Because there's still limitations to the designs of all these buildings.
Sure.
And so we want to kind of consider and weigh that.
yeah, I can see that's an interesting question, because at the smaller branches, there probably isn't the space or the checkout capacity. These things cost something, so maybe you're focusing on the places with the higher volume. And how granular do you get?
And exactly, and so the smaller branches that don't have that same level of circulation, we're not hardly even considering it. However, I'll say the technology is changing so quickly. So like, for instance, and this has been around now for years, at the smaller locations, you can envision that there'd be like a metal plate, and you can stack like 30 items on top, and then it checks them in all at once. So it's not an automated handling machine, but it still uses the RFID technology and can increase efficiency that way. So it may require different technology at different locations.
Interesting.
I've got one more question too.
Okay, I'll just do my last one. This one's pretty granular. You were talking about potentially moving a generator. Do you know how new, have you guys looked into how new the generator is?
So that's something we still have to examine if it's feasible to move the current. It is a relatively new generator at downtown. We still have to go through a couple of hoops to see if the specs really match what's needed at Boulder Creek, or if there's something else that we need to do.
Yeah, it's kind of bleeding into a bit of a comment. I'll break my own rule, but I'll just say, in my experience, sometimes the cost of the generator is a relatively nominal portion of the overall generator projects. And sometimes with the changes in the air quality rules, and everything else, it's like the savings of the value of that existing generator sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it might. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one more question. I saw that we're assuming a pretty significant decrease in donations and trusts for FY 25. I'm just curious what assumptions were built into that. Last year we had, just shy of 950,000. It looks like we're projecting around 103,000 for next year.
I think, and Karen probably has more to add to this. I know that the former director's philosophy was we had a lot of trusts that had been sitting for a long time, and she wanted to just dissolve them and activate the resources there. So a lot of those funds had been sitting around for years, and she moved to
Draw them down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
is that
Yes.
Okay.
Some more questions.
Go ahead.
So, I was just curious about the insurance for our libraries. How do we, I'm just curious, I just realized I don't know how they're insured. Are they through the city of Santa Cruz's risk management? Are they through I don't know if they're through my risk management, like, is this my risk management? Is this the libraries? Is it Matt's? I was just realizing when I read that, I was like, I don't know that, so I should know that.
Yeah, and there's actually two tracks to think about it.
Okay,
The collection is insured through the city, through our policy with the city of Santa Cruz.
okay, so they have an actual, the city has a vendor that they're buying a product for to ensure the collection.
The collection.
Okay.
Right? But then the lease,
Yes, so the branches, all county library fund branches are insured through the library fund and the county, so.
Through the counties.
Hmm.
So we carry our own policy, the county does.
We do.
And the city, Capitola,
No,
it's
we
part of
carry
our
it.
ours, part of the lease.
Oh, part of Santa Cruz.
We have the 99-year
but,
lease.
but Matt's are
Matt's branches
are
are
his.
the city of
standalone.
Santa Cruz's.
We insure them.
Branch.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know. I realized I didn't understand that. I ought to. The other question I had was, it seemed like there's a big decrease in the books and periodicals budget. $271,000 decrease. And I was thinking that seems like a lot.
Well, our budget is based on the revenues, all revenues minus donations and transfers. We take 8% of that, revenue and, put it towards our collections budget. As Eric mentioned, we were supplementing that with some trust funds.
Oh, I see.
So that could be part of some of it.
So it's artificially high because of the trust funds. So it's decreasing.
and then
So it's not a net, that's, okay, it was artificially high for 1 year or 2 years, whatever, that's. more normal.
And that's something that we're also seeking to benchmark with other library systems our size to find out what percentage of revenue they use to apply. And right now, we've done some research into that, and we're not far off from what other systems are applying from their revenue for collections, but it's something we want to continue to benchmark. And I'll just add, we noted in the report, we're taking a percentage, 10% right now from that budget to save, because we know that we'll have to buy a lot of new books when we open the downtown library. And we've done that for all the other large openings that we've had. We've socked away some of the money for collections so that we can have brand new books when we open that cost, Capitola, et cetera.
Is 8% the number we've been using for a number of years, or
I don't know when that
At
may,
least 10,
at least,
at least 10.
at least 10? Huh, and it's 10% of our overall revenue. Is it?
I'm sorry, I was saying 10% of our book budget
Yeah,
allocation is what we're putting away
oh,
to save. So not the overall budget, the 8% is the revenue. 10% of what's already allocated for books. I should say all materials for collections. We're putting that away in anticipation of the new books that we'll have to buy for the new downtown library.
okay. I was trying to understand the 8% that we found of revenue to dedicate. Do you know what the history of that number is? And
I don't know if I can ask someone in the audience who was involved with this 10 years ago. But I do know that that's not far off from what we've started, I had the same question, and so we're trying to find out what other systems our side do. And yeah, and that seems to be within those parameters of what they use. But we're gonna continue to benchmark it.
We did survey at the time, and that 8% was a national average at that time, but I have to say it was some years ago.
yeah, is there, how does the public react to our collection? Do they complain that, God, these books are all old, they don't get enough new books, or what is your thought from being out with the public?
The good news is the demand is high. The thing that, and we're gonna have a presentation in June by our collections manager. She came to the Library Advisory Commission when we met last to talk about this tension between the demand for e-items and then the print items, and how we're always trying to figure out what that right mix is. One thing we've done and we're introducing this spring is a new service called Little Plus. So this is sort of, I kind of consider it like interlibrary loan on steroids. Instead of using an intermediary where they have to go to a staff person to pursue their item from another system, they can do it through our catalog. And then it gets delivered to their branch. And so that'll really augment our collection quite significantly. There are very few items as a result of that people wouldn't be able to get. I think the challenge still will be though, these new books that come out and there's a high demand for it. So, you know, it is hard, because these are items that don't typically after we consider them hot, they don't necessarily stick around, after they've gone through that period where people are really eager and hungry to get it. So what we do is we also lease books, so we don't, to get away from just purchasing books when we know these are gonna be temporarily in high demand. So we do a number of different things like that to try to meet the demand, but as you can tell from the report this month, circulation is up quite significantly across the board at just nearly all of the branches. So it is always very challenging for us to meet that demand.
And isn't it on the digital side often that I just have a recollection of occasionally trying to get a digital book and finding out there's a 6-month wait or something? Is that where you see more of the wait list issue, or is that just my bias, my own personal bias coming in here?
I think it might be a personal bias. I think there's definitely that though. I mean, Sarah Hardison will speak to this when she comes in June to give a presentation on the collection. There are different publishing models. So some we purchase, no matter how many items go out. There's a platform so that you can get it. You don't have to wait. It just increases our costs. So some of the platforms provide that, others don't. And you have to wait like everyone else. We also have what we call the lucky day collection. So items that we know are in high demand, where we're not going to meet the demand, we'll just buy extra copies and then put them out so that if you come into the library, it's your lucky day, you'll see it, and then you can grab it, you can jump ahead of the line, so to speak, for that wait list. So obviously we don't have that for ebooks, but if you look at how many people reserve some of these hot items for their print items, the list for some of them is quite long. But we have obviously limited resources to make those purchases.
Thank you.
I just have one more question. I was looking at the vehicles that I forget you guys have some vehicles. Do we have a policy about going electric or to EVs in our vehicle policy?
We don't have a specific vehicle policy, but in our strategic plan, we talk about having our carbon footprint. And I forget the year we put in there, it's not too far off in the distant future. So it's something that's on our mind and we're looking at. But there isn't.
How many vehicles do you have?
We have the bookmobile and then we have 2 other vehicles. We have an SUV and then we have an item. No, we have 3 others, and then we have the carrier service vehicle, and then we have the SUV,
Maintenance.
and then maintenance. Thank you.
So I see the schedule appendix C, I guess is that the list of all your vehicles?
Yes.
That is, yeah, it just seems like it would be pretty easy for us to go all electric. I know that we're trying to do that in the county and we have, hundreds of vehicles.
Yeah.
And so we've set a policy where we're not 100%, obviously with public safety and some of the big trucks, but basically every standard pickup and even the small vans, we're going electric. So so you buy them through the city? Is that how you're doing them?
Yes. Yeah.
Because we have a contract with Enterprise where we
do that as well.
you do that. So we're just
Not
talking,
for
we
all.
want electric. So anyway, it's something to think about because for our board, that's a pretty big thing. And it seems like we have such a small pool that eventually we could go pretty easily all electric vehicles. And it seems like from my board's perspective, we're trying to do that countywide and it seems like this would be pretty simple to do. So I would appreciate if you think about that and maybe as we may want to develop a policy. Do you folks are you doing that now?
I think there's an airborne requirement actually that
Really?
next year, either this year or next year, 50% of all new purchases are electric unless there's an infeasible alternative.
Mm.
And then that year after, it's 100%. It's coming right up. So I think it's mandated.
Yeah, we have a fleet electrification policy that we could share as well. Obviously, we're already working with you on the procurement piece anyways. The larger element of that is we're planning for it is having all the infrastructure in place in order to accommodate it. So we're actually in the process of hiring an energy manager to help with that as well as part of our climate resiliency and sustainability work. So we can certainly help with that.
That's great.
Okay. Are there any more questions? I think we maybe will bring it back for some discussion afterwards, but is there any public comment on the budget this year, proposed budget? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Does anyone want to start off with kind of comments and potential direction? All right, I have a few things that I wanted to bring up. All stuff we've talked about. The first one is, on the taxes side, I think when we come back with our final proposed budget, let's see that tax figure. Let's kind of hone in on the right number there, but I do think that there's a little bit more headroom potentially. The second thing is on the book side, you know, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but we are sitting on an uncommitted fund balance of a lot, beyond our committed reserves. And, you know, I know that the 8% figure, I recall distant memory of looking at that. And my recollection was that the 8%, it was like, when you looked at other systems, it was a range and, you know, there's like 7 at the low or 6 at the low and 12 for Beverly Hills or something. And I, you know, I for one would be interested in, because that is a potential one-time expenditure, if we don't adjust our policy to say, you know, we're now at 10% of the organization looking at one-time expenditures there, particularly when you're looking at things that have really long wait lists. So I don't know how the rest of the board would feel, but if you were to show what that cost would look like to go to 10% maybe for a year.
I would support that.
Okay,
Yeah, I would support that as well. I would just, I guess one caveat to that is getting a better sense, Eric, of what assumptions you all are making around the materials cost for the main branch as it comes online. So just wanting to get a sense of that in addition to, you know, an additional spend on materials, just so we have that context.
yeah, and I will also note that, you know, for the Capitola branch, we did fundraising for the new branch collection. So, you know, I think that there's probably some balance between whether there's a JPA cost or a kind of a fundraising cost. The risk question is really interesting. It's like I have a pretty good handle on how we insure our stuff, but there's other types of insurance. And so maybe that's something that the city of Santa Cruz, I know you have a risk manager, could help us with a little bit to just make sure that we have kind of all the different types of policies that a standalone JPA we really would want. And then the last one, and this is probably the most controversial, but you know, we've kind of ducked this question about what is the annex, for a long time. I heard a giggle from the audience. You know, our JPA's talks about us being a 10-branch system. And now there's a new facility. And, you know, I feel like before we start putting our staff there, we need to decide what the annex is. And Interim Director Howard, I think you had a good explanation, but it kind of ducked the overall question, which, what is this? Is this another branch? Is this a piece of the Live Oak system? You know, do we now consider Live Oak as kind of both? And that's the way we're gonna consider that. That has implications for some of our leases with particularly Capitola and Scotts Valley. Is it like the bookmobile? I don't know. Is it we'll fund it once we get the branches first? I'm just not sure. And I feel like it would be good for this board to sort of say, this is how the annex fits in the system. So I know that that's a little bit of a tricky question, and we're not gonna answer it right now, but maybe that's something you could come back with some suggestions for the budget about kind of like what is the role of the units? And if any other board members have any thoughts about that, I'd be very interested. And those are my comments.
Well, I'll just say that and I've never thought of it as another branch. It's what it is. It's an annex to the library. That's the way I've looked at it, and we're providing supplemental services. I think that's what we said from the very beginning. So kind of what we're doing now, we're gonna provide some hours, bookmobile's gonna go there. There's gonna be, some time when the public can go there and get books. We're gonna especially outreach to young people, because they're right there with the Boys and Girls Club and the school. So that's what I've always thought from the very beginning. So maybe we just need to make that more formal. But I think the way you're treating it in the budget is pretty much how I've seen it.
Just one last comment, and this might be more geared or more suitable for the 10-year financial plan that we're building out, but what assumptions we're making for maintenance of all the branches? And life cycle replacement costs related to all these beautiful improvements we've made at each of the branch locations, and going forward, what that capital outlay looks like as we're working to maintain these facilities.
Okay. Staff, do you have the feedback you're looking for today? Any other questions you need answered?
Thank you. I think I have. Thank you very much.
Okay,
And just to be clear, so you would, I'm sorry. I would-
yeah,
Just going back to the 10%, if we were to put that into the budget for the collections, that was the general direction that you're giving us when we come back in June.
for one, I wouldn't sort of dictate 10. I think my recommendation would be kind of go back, talk to your circulations manager, look at what we have, look at where the real need is, and come back and sort of say, hey, look, based on everything, I think that bumping it this next year to X would provide a notable benefit.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. If there's no further discussion, then I will take us to item B on our general business agenda.
Comment or you did? Great.
Which is code of conduct. Your staff presentation.
Thank you. I have a report. I don't have a presentation on this, but I did want to just share with you a little bit around the changes we've incorporated into the library when we make changes. So there's, over the past year, a new team inside our library that represents every division called the Change Management Team. And then we also have a standing policy team that also has representation. And so with all of our new policies, we're taking it through both of these teams. And the purpose of the Change Management Team is really to ask the question, why? Why are we doing this? So that staff can appreciate it. And then we can also think about unintended consequences. We have to revise our code of conduct, just as we do with all of our policies, on a schedule. And so we also run this past the attorneys to see if there have been any changes with the law that might impact this. The purpose of the code of conduct is really to ensure that we have a safe, healthy environment for everybody. And so one of our first steps when we have an issue where it might be a transgression around this current code of conduct that we have, or the past code of conduct, is to just inform that patron so that they're aware that this is something that they probably wouldn't want to have happen to them if they're behaving in a certain way. So the first step is really to be informational. And part of that is that we've trained staff on de-escalation. We brought in a vendor that was called Vigilar, which also works with hospitals, and worked with staff so that the goal here is to de-escalate so that things don't become a real serious problem. Unfortunately, as you can tell from the incident report, we still have a lot of challenges. We're dealing with the public, so everyone is welcome to come in, and that means that we're also vulnerable to lots of behavior. And it's going to be an ongoing process to work with our staff to de-escalate these situations, but we're still going to have really challenging situations. And that's where the code of conduct is really important, so that we have a uniform way of addressing these issues, whether you're in Boulder Creek or downtown or La Selva. we're applying the same code. And that also means that if a patron has an issue with it, there's a process for them to go and appeal it. And so we have that built into it as well. And if it comes to the point where we actually ask someone to leave for a period of time, we serve them with a packet that details why they've been asked to leave. And it gives them that information too around the appeal process, so that if they disagree with it, there's a process and something we take very seriously. We don't want to deny anybody their library services. But the flip side to that is, if that person's behavior has really reached a level, that means they are denying someone else in our library the service that they deserve to be in a safe and welcoming environment as well. So we're trying to find that balance. I want to thank James Lee, who's the branch manager from downtown, who's helped considerably in us thinking through the changes that we've made. And I also want to thank the entire team that worked with us on the change management team and the policy team. We did not make any dramatic changes to the code of conduct that we had been using. There are words that we feel are more efficient in communicating the issues that we have, and that's really what we focused on, was trying to make this really clear, really concise, so that it could be a powerful tool for our staff. And the Library Advisory Commission did endorse it. We went over this process with them as well, and they came out and supported it as well.
Okay. Are there any board questions on the code of conduct? So the one change that I saw here is that we're kind of changing the composition of the review panel.
There's a number of changes to the code of conduct itself, and then the one change we made to the appeal process was, I think there was some things lost in translation when it was first developed, because the idea was, and I understood this motivation, they wanted to have a security guard at the appeal process. Somehow that got melded into putting the security guard on the panel. And I think they didn't separate those two.
Yeah.
So we cleaned that up in this version. So the security guard no longer sits on the panel, but in probably most cases, it's probably still a good idea to have a security guard there during that process.
That seems appropriate, and it seems like keeping people in the appropriate roles.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any public comment on the updated code of conduct? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
So I'll move to endorse the library's code of conduct and administrative suspension policy.
Second.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll call voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, so that takes us to the next item of business this morning, which is Capitola service hours and staff presentation.
So we've submitted a report where the staff attempted to answer the questions that were raised when I made the recommendation in our last meeting to return Capitola to its 6-day operation. Some of those questions entail doing cost modeling. There was a question around other potential Sunday service models. So one idea was to have it be geographically balanced, potentially Capitola open on Sunday and Felton open on Sunday, and then close downtown on Sunday. One of the questions also asked us to do a GIS report around population density. We want to thank the county for lending out their GIS expert on this. We asked them to take it a couple steps farther than just asking about population density. So within the framework of our strategic plan, we wanted to know what are the rates of poverty, what's connectivity, how many people have access to the internet. We also want to look at seniors and how many children are of school age and attending school. So we look at those factors as well. And then using a metric that's often been used in libraries, which is a 2-mile radius from a branch or a 10-minute drive time, is how we looked at those demographics. And we also were asked to do a survey of potentially patrons who are potentially impacted. So we did all those things, and then our analysis was that based on our strategic plan, it makes sense to go back to how we have it for Capitola, which is a 6-day operation. And then we also interviewed patrons on Sundays and Saturdays at Capitola. and determined that the Sunday patrons are more flexible in their ability to either go to a different branch or go at a different time of the week. And so the recommendation is really not just to return to the 6-day operation, but to have it return to what it was before, which is closing on Sunday, but being open on the other days. I also have recommended, both when we met last and again today, that when we do the strategic plan, we do a deeper dive into what makes sense around our hours for all the branches. And take into consideration late hours, maybe having somewhat different hours in different geographic locations. But I think that really takes a deeper dive, requires a deeper dive. But I do think that the data that we got back, which is pretty extensive, around costs and the GIS and the surveys that we did, really points to returning Capitola to 6 days. And just as a quick reminder, and I should have said it just at the beginning, it had always been, at least it was my understanding, that Capitola would go back to a 6-day operation. The 7-day operation was done to mitigate the impacts that this community here in the surrounding area experienced when Aptos was under construction. And so we were trying to compensate the community by having those extended hours at Capitola. And then in the summer, it was considered that let's take a closer look at this for a 6-month period, which will a 6-month period from the time that Aptos opens. So that'll be August 5th. So the recommendation is to return to the 6-day service at Capitola on August 5th. And by getting a vote today, operationally allows us to do a number of things that I think are really important to staff, as well as it gives them certainty around their schedules and where they will be. Because we are stretched, having Capitola open 7 days does stretch us with our staffing. We're borrowing hours from downtown. Right now, there are more hours at Capitola than Aptos, even though Aptos is busier than Capitola. And so we know we have to be within the rules of the lease, which say that Aptos can't be more than, Aptos can't be more than Capitola. But right now, Capitola is at more staffing than Aptos, and we need to figure out a way to balance this better for the entire system.
Okay. Are there any questions by board members? I have a lot of comments, but I will, don't think I really have questions. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, seeing that, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. First off, I just want to start with kind of a wow statement. This is the probably most extensive and well-researched item I have seen in all my years on the library board. I think you guys did a kind of a home run in terms of your homework and presenting data and helping understand kind of the pros and cons of the decision. So just real kudos to you and the entire team on this. I you know, when I first heard it, I felt like I was kind of shooting in the dark, and now I feel like I'm almost overwhelmed with information. So really great job.
Yeah, I second that. I thought it was a really thorough, robust, thoughtful review with really helpful data, so that we're not just kind of grasping at straws in terms of what would be appropriate in terms of hours, and really intentionally looking at it with an equity lens. I thought was really helpful. And you know, of course, in a perfect world, we'd love to have all of our branches open 7 days a week, right? And I think that's something that we could continue to explore as we work on this additional future strategic plan and what that would look like and the implications of that. But I think for the time being, now that we have Aptos up and running and we've kind of relieved some of that pressure here locally on the branch, I think the recommendation makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
I agree with board member Huppeker's comments.
So, you know, obviously as the Capitol representative here, it's a hard pill to swallow. You know, I see in the data that by keeping Maine open, we are supporting a younger and population that has lower incomes. They're not serving seniors quite as well, and I think that there's are policy decisions, right? There's where do we put our resources? Overall, though, I think that you've explained, kind of done the homework and explained why the recommendation makes sense. It's a little bit hard to see because, we do see the foot count, when we look at Felton and Capitola combined in terms of visitors and circulation, we're talking about numbers approaching a third of the total system. And Maine is not that. So that's a little bit of a kind of a hang up for me. I guess I'm prepared to support the recommendation and help explain this with these data to our community if we get pushback. The one thing though that I will note is a number of other joint powers authorities around the state, have ways in which jurisdictions can enhance the base level of service that's provided by the JPA. I know the Sacramento and San Mateo County JPAs do that. Our JPA contemplates that. There is language in our JPA that talks about members providing additional funding for enhanced levels of service. Capitola is within, and Felton is within the library fund. And I know that there are resources within the library fund. This board doesn't control those excess funds within the library fund, so I ask those that do control the library fund, county, if it's something that they would want to think about. I mean, I think we have a pretty good cost for what it would take to do Felton and Capitola at with Sunday service. So not so much direction for staff, but I guess something for the county to think about.
I think it's a great idea. Ideally, we would have a number of branches open up 7 days a week, right? Because it's just schedules nowadays, right? And so, so I think we should look at trying to open up Capitola and Felton with an additional contribution from the county's library fund and see how much it costs and how feasible it is. So I've been supportive of that direction.
Okay.
I guess just one last comment on how the data currently looks in terms of, foot count. It's a little bit of apples and oranges because of the current condition of the main branch compared to these, new state-of-the-art facilities. So I think once we get through construction of the main branch and we kind of let the data kind of level set and get to a new baseline, we'll have a better sense of what those numbers look like. But, personally, I visit the Capitola Library with my family on Sundays often, and I see the strong demand that exists there. And I would certainly be supportive of, getting to a point where we have both Felton and Capitola 7 days a week. And I think we're still seeing some of the influence of us moving through these branch improvements that are still influencing the data. So.
Yes,
Just
clearly.
a comment.
Yeah, clearly, and I fully expect that when the new main is done, that these numbers would shift. We are talking about next year though, so obviously we're gonna be kind of operating within the current paradigm that we're working in.
True.
Okay. So it's a bitter pill for me to swallow, but Carlos offered a ray of hope, and so I think we can look forward to having a conversation kind of about library fund, on thinking about that and kind of the relationship between, the hours on Sunday and how we might do that. It might be a bit of a complicated conversation. I do also know that a year from now is our MOE agreement is expiring, so, maybe we have a conversation kind of around both of those issues sort of at the same time. Because a year from now, we're gonna need a new agreement on MOE. Maintenance of effort for those of you who are familiar with the acronym. So the recommended motion is to accept staff recommendation to return Capitola branch hours to 6 days, week of service beginning on August 5th.
Could we have direction to explore the concept for next year of using the library fund as a potential additional contribution to open up Capitola and Felton for Sunday hours?
Yeah, I'm 100% open to that.
Second.
Maybe before next year.
Or sooner.
I say we explore, instead of next year, just explore the concept of the county library fund making an additional contribution to maintain Capitola and Belton open on or offering Sunday hours.
All right,
Second,
and we did take public comment, right? Yes?
There is no public comment right now.
Oh, okay, I think we went out to public comment. I'm seeing a nod from the audience. All right, so there's a motion and a second. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. So the last item is a presentation by Jesse Silva, our outreach librarian too. Welcome.
Oh, sure.
Hello, my name is Jessie Silva. I'm librarian at the downtown Santa Cruz branch. And I'm the supervisor of bookmobile services and of jail reach, which is an outreach. And I'm here today to give you a brief overview of bookmobile services. I'm going to start with our mission statement. The bookmobile provides library services in communities that are underserved by traditional branches due to physical, economic, social, geographic, or other barriers. Typical bookmobile sites include senior housing and affordable housing communities. The bookmobile, which you can see here, is a Freightliner purchased in 2016. It can hold up to 2,500 items, 2,500 items. It's ADA compliant and has a chairlift for those who may need it. The first traveling library in Santa Cruz County began in 1950. And it was started by this woman here in the upper right corner, just a community member who wanted to get books to people who were confined at their home. And she partnered with the librarian at the time to bring library books to people who were at home for whatever reason. In the picture there, they call them shut-ins. It's a sign of the times there. In 1971, the library purchased its first bookmobile. It's pictured at the stop sign, and it served rural areas and low-income neighborhoods. Also pictured here is Catherine Steele. She was instrumental in creating the bookmobile's current mission statement, and she was a fierce advocate for library services for communities who are historically overlooked and underserved by our library system. The picture, I really like to point out the picture in gray where she's loading the box. Behind her is a decommissioned police car that she somehow bought. I don't think she had to pay for it. She just got the police department to give her a decommissioned police car. So that was, in a way, a bookmobile back in the 70s. Today, the bookmobile is staffed by 2 bookmobile LA2s who operate the truck and deliver services. Eric Chalfant, who's pictured here from a Sentinel article about a year ago, has been working on the bookmobile for 26 years. He is our resident bookmobile expert. Eric is joined by Tyree Ritchie, who began with the library about a year ago, and I took on the supervisory role earlier this year. The bookmobile visits 23 sites every month. Each site gets services every other week. We bring the bookmobile to low-income neighborhoods like the Beach Flats area and mid-pin housing communities. We also serve senior living facilities. Many of those are also low-income. And we serve rural communities such as the Buena Vista Labor Camp in South County and the town of Davenport. We also provide deposit collections to 7 affordable child care centers throughout the county. These mini book collections are delivered monthly and curated for each site. One site that was recently added is the Cabrillo College Children's Center, which provides Cabrillo student parents with free or low-cost child care services. And we offer lobby stop services for a few sites that the bookmobile cannot serve. either because the site is not appropriate to park the truck or because the patrons are better served by us bringing the books into the facility. Current lobby stops are the Sunshine Villa Assisted Living Facility and Janus Substance Use Recovery Center in Santa Cruz. We'd like to expand this service as our capacity allows, potentially offering services at other substance use recovery centers, assisted living facilities, and homeless services centers such as Housing Matters and the Overlap Shelter in Santa Cruz. We also support homebound patrons and the Book Buddies program. Homebound cards are available for people who are unable to visit a library due to disability or extended illness. Bookmobile staff are responsible for setting up these accounts. Book Buddies are library volunteers who pick up books from the library and deliver them to the homebound patron. The Book Buddy program is overseen by the library's volunteer coordinator, and we're excited to see that position recently filled. There are currently 10 homebound patrons linked with volunteers, and there is definitely demand for more volunteers as we get requests for homebound cards on a regular basis. And looking towards the future, we hope to expand into additional rural areas throughout the county and low-income neighborhoods. And we plan to integrate the Jail Reach Services team with the Bookmobile team as the mission and methods are much the same. Plus, we have a new book bike coming soon, which is funded by the City of Santa Cruz's Carbon Fund Award, and will offer scaled back services to sites in the City of Santa Cruz. And we hope to collaborate with librarians to offer programs at some of our sites, such as story time for rural and low-income families and tech tutoring for seniors. That is a very brief overview of Bookmobile services, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Questions from the board?
Just thank you very much. It was great service, and I really appreciate all the work that staff are doing to make that available to the public.
Yeah, I just echo that. I see the bookmobile all over the county and often with a lot of smiling faces around it as folks are accessing those materials. So I just really appreciate the work you do.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting to see the history. I didn't know that it went back so far. Learned a little bit about the folks that were instrumental in bringing the bookmobile to the county originally. Were they delivering books out of an old police car, or was it like sort of a follow car?
The story I heard is that she would load up those bank boxes with either library books or donated books and take them out. Mostly, she was really going out to rural areas in South County to labor camps and taking books out to those folks. And she would, I mean, she did it on her own. She'd drive out there and distribute books, get people library accounts if they wanted them, try to connect them to a branch, but really just trying to get folks out into those communities. And the decommissioned police car, I'm not sure if it was from the City of Santa Cruz or the Sheriff's Department. I should probably try to find out for sure. But she was, she kind of did whatever it took
Yeah,
to make the thing happen.
well, that's really
That's cool.
impressive, and it's nice to see how far we've come. I'm glad we're no longer relying on that as our method for delivery and providing services in these areas.
Yes, yeah.
Is there any public comment today on presentation? Okay, seeing none, any further discussion? I think that brings us to comments by board members. Are there any comments that we didn't already get a chance to make today?
I would just note that our housing and economic development team that are serving as our project managers for the main branch will be bringing a comprehensive update to our next board meeting for those that are interested.
Oh, great. Just gonna ask you. I'll look forward to seeing that. Okay, the schedule of upcoming meetings, our next meeting is June 6th, 9 a.m. at the Transport Library. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Or being just